At the start of the season, Erik Ten Hag wanted United to be the best transitional team in the world. For me, the best transitional teams gegenpress. They look to force turnovers high up the pitch and then counter-attack with speed and purpose. They do this in a compact and aggressive manner and they create a lot of opportunities. But when watching Manchester United, I don't quite see that. But instead of falling into my own bias, I've done some research and I've watched all of Manchester United's pressing and this is what I've learnt. Per 90 this season, only Luton Town, West Ham United and 20th place Sheffield United have conceded more shots on their goal than Manchester United in the Premier League. So why are United conceding so many chances? I think bluntly their pressing is very, very poor and that solely sits on Erik Ten Hag. Before we talk about Manchester United's pressing structure, let's dive in to what is gegenpressing to understand the concept that Erik Ten Hag is trying to put on his Manchester United team. Gegenpressing literally translates to counter-pressing, so when a team loses the ball, they immediately try and win it back with the players closest to the ball, putting pressure on it and the surrounding area. The concept was built upon by Ralf Rangnick, but Jurgen Klopp took it to the next level and almost entirely built his Borussia Dortmund team around winning the ball back when the opposition were in their possession or build-up shape, and famously stated, no playmaker in the world can be as good as a good gegenpressing situation. Now gegenpressing has become known as a front-footed counter-attacking style of play, where the gegenpressing team will look to force turnovers high up the pitch before quickly attacking the goal. This is their identity, looking to attack, not retain possession. So what does Manchester United's press actually look like? Erik Ten Hag from the start of the season fielded United in a narrow 4-2-3-1, with the aim of forcing the opposition to play inside, where they had more bodies and can win the ball back and quickly transition through Marcus Rashford, Bruno Fernandes, Rasmus Højlund or Garnacho. This is a good structure, but the issue that Manchester United have got is most teams build with two players in defensive midfield. The 3-2-5 structure is the meta in European football, which usually meant when Man United set up in this shape, one of the midfielders would have to move into the attacking midfield line to press a double pivot, creating a situation in defensive midfield of disorganisation. Either inside channel was open. United's other problems were they were far too open if the ball was played over the top. So teams worked out that you could simply clip the ball over Manchester United from centre-back or from the goalkeeper, escape the press, because the wingers were slow to get back. The defensive midfielders would have to move over to defend one flank, and we all know the cutback situation that follows that. But what Manchester United tried to do and adapt this shape, they tried to drop the two midfielders into the sort of midfield line and play very, very wide, which consequently opened up other issues where teams could openly play through Manchester United because they're trying to cover the entire width of the pitch, whereas all the best pressing teams played narrow. Ten Hag did spot this and he's changed his system, but there's still problems. So Ten Hag moved to a 4-1-4-1 to try and alleviate this issue. And Manchester United have looked better, but there's still the common issues. One of the big things in this shape now that Manchester United play is they can squeeze the double pivot with two central midfielders. They can be aggressive and look to win the ball back in those central areas. But the issues that we're seeing in the narrow 4-2-3-1 are still there. Manchester United, for me, are far too wide. The width of the team is too big to be a successful pressing team. There's a lack of, a centre forward forcing the team outside and making them play down a flank, which is how I see football in a pressing situation should go. United are still trying to force you to play through their midfield line. What this means is there's a lot of space for the defensive midfielder to cover. On top of that, the back four usually features one of Raphael Varane, Johnny Evans or Harry Maguire. Three centre-backs that aren't mobile anymore, which means they have to play a little bit deeper, which opens up even more space for Man United's defensive midfield to cover. And we've seen time and time again teams carve through Manchester United and get shots on goal. What they should be doing, in my opinion, is forcing the opposition down one flank and then using the touchline as an extra defender and fully moving out there and playing very zonal in midfield. What this would mean is Rasmus Højlund becomes the first presser. He'd force the opposition down one flank. Then United, as Højlund's pressing, would move over in a very, very connected manner, where they could play aggressive and basically defend half the pitch versus the width of the pitch, as we see over and over again. Consequently, for that, Manchester United can play, sort of high on one side, that's pressing the football, and then low on the other side, making them very good from a transitional perspective. If, for example, Luke Shaw needs to jump out and presses, the opposition's winger, he can jump, Martinez can cover the flank, Varane can step over, and Diogo Dalot can be in a cover position. This shape is already more compact. This shape is already better at pressing, and that's something that United really need to learn. It's that high line, it's a compact shape. But I do think Erik Ten Hag knows that he needs to do this. At times in press conference, he talks about that shape being a real poignant thing. They need to be more compact, they need to squeeze more because that allows them to press, and we do see that. But I do think United need to start pressing teams wide instead of forcing them inside. So it's time to look at some pressing data. Statistically, United rank quite well in certain metrics that are seen as pressing pieces of data. For example, goals following a defensive action. Manchester United ranked first in the Premier League with 4 goals this season. 1 come against Arsenal, 1 coming against Aston Villa, 1 against Forest, and of course 1 against West Ham United. But actually, if we break that statistic down, it doesn't really correlate with Man United's pressing structure. What I want is team pressing actions and counter-pressing situations that lead to shots. But if we actually have a look through the definition on Football Ref, it is quite interesting. The 2 offensive actions that directly lead to a shot, such as passes, take-ons, drawing fouls, but also defensive actions are included. So let's take a look at those examples we spoke about, the 4 goals that have followed a defensive action. The first one is away at the Emirates. Marcus Rashford scoring a brilliant individual goal. But this comes from Christian Eriksen making a defensive action in a deep block, not a pressing situation. Moving forward to the goal against Aston Villa, Højlund's, it came from a corner. Antony's on the edge and gets awarded a tackle. Not quite sure why that is correct. Moving on to Nottingham Forest, the 2-1 away win. It's an individual defensive action from Alejandro Garnacho that feeds Marcus Rashford that we could put in a pressing situation, but more on that later on. And finally, the goal against West Ham. That one's pretty obvious, right? Casemiro winning it high, Rasmus Højlund dropping his shoulder, shifting it to his weaker right foot and firing it into the bottom corner. No. That doesn't actually count, because the defensive action was 3 actions back. Casemiro won the ball, then played a pass, then Højlund did a take-on, and then put the ball in the back of the net. Got to be careful with statistics. It actually came from Scott McTominay robbing Kelvin Phillips and playing in Garnacho to seal the win for Manchester United. So we've got to be very, very careful with statistics. But looking at other statistics, Manchester United actually ranked really highly on the opt-an list for high turnovers that have led to shots. This all sounds a bit wrong to me watching Manchester United week in, week out. Yes, I'm the stat man by trade, but I am also a big fan of the eye test. My hypothesis is that Manchester United are very poor in gegenpressing situations. That's Manchester United winning the ball through counter pressure or through team pressing that leads to a shot. That for me is a true gegenpressing moment, using the press to create. So I went back and watched every single one of Manchester United's shots from game week 1 in the Premier League to game week 23, and then categorised them slightly different to Opta. In terms of the Opta list, they categorise a high turnover within 40 metres of the opponent's goal. To simplify things, we broke it down as turnovers in the opponent's half that led to shots. They're the gegenpressing moments that we want to look at. Those transitional moments that Erik Ten Hag was banging on about in pre-season. So let's have a look at that data. So from the 300 plus shots that we analysed, Manchester United had 94 shots from turnovers in the opponent's half. But worrying statistics, 56% of those shots came from unintentional high turnovers. When we talk unintentional, I'm talking that we're negating the counter-pressing situations and team pressing situations that United should be doing. Think Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp. Those 56 instances included the likes of United winning second balls after a long pass, or a Manchester United pass hitting an opposition player and then United recovering the ball, or loose ball recoveries from wayward things like passes or clearances or shots on goal, United recovering that second ball. From the 94 shots, there were 21 that were intentional high turnovers, 19.1% from team pressing. That's systematic pressing as a unit, forcing a turnover from a defensive block. So that's 18 situations in 23 games. But even worse, counter pressure, there was only 3 examples that led to shots. That's systematic pressure as a unit to force a turnover after losing possession. Looking at the other shots, 17 were from individual duels winning the ball back, not in a structured way. Think Casemiro, classically one player moving out of the structure and winning the ball back. Out of the 56 unintentional high turnovers that led to shots, 27 of them were rebounds. That's clearances from crosses, block shots, or rebounds from dribbles. But the most damning statistic of the lot, Manchester United have scored 9 goals from high turnovers, but only 2, yes 2, have come from team cohesive pressing or counter-pressing, which for me means Manchester United need to revisit that on the training ground. They need to be more compact, more aggressive, and win the ball back in a more systematic way. In conclusion, regarding the statistics, sometimes it's better to do your own analysis and create your own data set, because companies and websites have their own definition. For me, pressing is something that you've got to define very, very strictly, as we've done for this video. But looking at other data, Scout have got Manchester United in a very average position in the Premier League. Man United are 10th for PPDA, that's passes allowed per defensive action, one metric to check out pressing. But also they're 8th in the Premier League for challenge intensity, that's the number of tackles, clearances, interceptions, or challenges per minute of opposition pressure. So not the best in the league, there is room for improvement. And if we take the Opt analysts who have got 1 goal from high turnovers, you're looking at our data set, and we've actually got 2. Rasmus Højlund versus West Ham, and of course Marcus Rashford versus Nottingham Forest. But that's enough about the data. How can Manchester United actually improve their pressing structure under Ten Hag to take them to that next level? So let's take a look at one of the situations that actually came down to individual pressing to win the ball back and United scoring a goal. That's Garnacho versus West Ham United. What unfortunately we're going to have to do is compare Manchester United to Liverpool and Manchester City, 2 of the best pressing teams in the Premier League. City, of course, use a 4-4-2 shape, and Liverpool still use a 4-5-1. So Liverpool could be the answer for Manchester United. So just taking a look at this situation right now, for me, the shape is far too wide and it's far too deep. It's not compact enough to squeeze West Ham United. If we're looking at the overall structure, it's kind of man for man. Of course, Erik Ten Hag says United do play man-to-man at some situations, but for me, this is a moment for zonal. You can see Casemiro sitting on the attacking midfielder. Bruno Fernandes is kind of dealing with Jarrod Bowen in that instant. Maguire and Varane are in very, very strange positions. This is what I mean about team structure and team shape. The space between Diogo Dalot and Harry Maguire is massive. The stagnation in Raphael Varane and Harry Maguire it's interesting. It's probably the best way to describe it. What's Raphael Varane picking up? I don't know. Why is the defensive line so deep? There's not really anyone threatening him. Of course, James Ward-Prowse has just made a forward run, but play offside, squeeze up the pitch. Think about what Unai Emery would do in this situation. His team would be compact. So I think as well, from the width of the team, Diogo Dalot to the left back or Marcus Rashford to Garnacho, the space is far too big. You're not really catching West Ham United out in any situation here. And as we move the play on, we see this is very individualistic. Rashford's not really putting pressure on the ball. You've not got anyone blocking off the pass to Kurt Zouma to cut that one out. There's no real squeeze on, Mohamed Kudus. It's all individual. And as the ball gets played, of course, Scott McTominay jumps really, really well. And as we see here, no one else is putting pressure on the football. What United need to start to do is have the ability to free 2 players up in the press. The only way you do that is by playing zonal and playing compact and not playing so man-to-man. Of course, United do win the ball back, transition and score, but that's all individual. Scott McTominay winning the play and getting the assist. If we compare that shape, how wide it is, as we have a look, so wide, so open, compared to the City and Liverpool, there's big differences. The big thing here is that Ben Johnson plays the wrong pass. If he slips it to Kurt Zouma, they play around the back of United's team, West Ham United are out. Alternatively, if Kelvin Phillips rolls this pressure and plays through, let's say he rolls Scott McTominay, gets into a sort of more attack-minded position, he's got options into feet from 3 different players, could look for the long switch. There's a 2v1 out wide. United's defensive structure is so open, and this is why they concede so many shots, because when the individual pressure comes in and they get beaten 1v1, which happens in football, United's shape is open, and that is the problem. That's why it needs to be more compact, high line, to squeeze the play higher up the pitch. And we've got a perfect example to highlight why it is super important to have a narrow, compact shape, because if you get rolled, you can still win the ball back. That's exactly what Manchester City did against West Ham. I wanted to use West Ham as the team because that's the one that Manchester United were playing against. So we've got examples of City versus West Ham and Liverpool versus West Ham in terms of their press being far better. So in this instance, City are defending in their narrow 4-4-2. Phil Foden's a nominal right winger. You've got Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland. See how they are cutting the pitch. West Ham are going to struggle to play out from that situation. Haaland's blocking off the ball to the centre half, and of course Julian Alvarez is blocking off Souček in midfield. But look, you can basically throw a blanket over Manchester City. There's the halfway line, there's the centre circle. Manchester City have cut the pitch in half, reducing that and creating a numerical superiority in the area of the ball. As we progress the play on, we see Phil Foden put pressure on the football. Then there's some aggression. Paquetá's received, there's pressure from both Phil Foden and Bernardo Silva. Again, look how narrow they are. They're defending in a zonal way. Rodri's blocking off the pass into midfield. From a United perspective, what you'd expect United to do is Rodri actually sitting on the West Ham attacking midfielder. Again, that's why United should play zonal. But talking about being rolled, Paquetá does really well. Feints, Bernardo Silva. Again, Bernardo Silva is one of the best defenders from central midfield in European football in terms of ability and his agility. He gets feinted, but the City structure is good. You can see how high the defensive line is. They're kind of like playing Antonio offside, and Carl Walker's simply going to step in and intercept. And the system and the structure saves Manchester City after losing a 1v1 duel in a pressing situation. So now let's take a look at Liverpool, because that's probably the model Manchester United need to follow, considering that Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes and Kobbie Mainoo all need to be in that central midfield zone for United, giving them work rate and ability to win the ball back. So Liverpool, we can clearly see their kind of 4-5-1 structure. 3 players playing zonal in central midfield. This is very, very important to allow them to squeeze high. Not only do they squeeze in really collective and triggering ways, but also they follow the press, which is super, super important. And we don't see that enough at Manchester United. And that's all about intensity. That's about aggression. That's about individual players wanting to win the ball back. So we've got West Ham United with Kurt Zouma in possession. But just have a look at how well Liverpool squeeze them back to their goalkeeper. So the big thing with Liverpool is they're hunting. All the players are on the front foot. We can see the far side central midfielder who's going to go and engage. He's going to go and play high. So we see the pressure come on. He steps up in an aggressive manner, ready to squeeze that other centre-back. Of course, Darwin Núñez is dealing with that central midfielder, James Ward-Prowse, who's dropped in. What that gives Liverpool is a fantastic base. It stops the passes. They're also playing a high line, and it allows them to be aggressive in these situations. Liverpool, of course, have got a number of triggers, one of them being a central midfielder receiving with his back to play. Soon as Liverpool see that, Dominik Szoboszlai jumps into action. So see how he's playing zonal, now he's playing man because there's a trigger. Aggressive, steps up, and then follows with brilliant curvature on his pressing angle. Why that little bit is so important is because he's blocking that pass back into Julian Alvarez, which allows him to jump high and again continue to squeeze. And just look how well Liverpool squeeze up. But also, the 2 central midfielders are actually higher than the striker, allowing Liverpool to be aggressive on both centre-backs. The communication and awareness is fantastic from Liverpool. We can see Dominik Szoboszlai checking where his teammates are to see whether he's the right man to press the goalkeeper. He is, and now Liverpool have just forced West Ham United to clear the ball and winning it back. And that's sometimes what you want to do from a gegenpressing situation. Force your opponents from a midfield area all the way back to their goalkeeper, then they go long, and that's where you win the ball back, allowing Liverpool to transition in the opponent's half. So overall, how do Manchester United improve their press? They need new centre-backs who are more mobile and better suited to defending with a higher line. A higher line compresses the pitch, giving the opposition less space to play in, which should help force more turnovers for Manchester United. Meanwhile, the mobility of the centre-backs and the sweeping ability of Onana can protect against balls in behind. To further improve, a team with greater mobility and energy levels should be better at collapsing over to one side of the pitch, again condensing it, giving the opposition less space to play in, but also giving Manchester United's pressers less space to cover. And if the press is played around, the ability of these players should allow them to recover well and get back into a compact block. Pressing in a narrow 4-3-3, 4-5-1 structure best suits the players available, and it means that when the ball's won, there are more options to pass to, which should make Manchester United a better team in the transition. What's more is that a narrow press is very difficult to actually play through, so it should make United a better team overall defensively. If Ten Hag continues to use a widespread and opening pressing structure, I think he'll do himself out of the Manchester United job. Ten Hag has already done wonders at the football club and dealt with a lot of tricky situations, players throwing their toys out of the pram, and not to mention the ownership change. If Ten Hag can adjust the pressing structure, be more zonal, be more aggressive, and filter over to one side of the pitch to make the opposition play in less of a space, United will be going in the right direction, and Ten Hag should be given another season to see what he can do with Dan Ashworth as a director of football. I've been Statman Dave, of course. Subscribe if you're new. What have you thought of the new set? Have you seen the little Easter egg in it behind? And of course, how would you improve Manchester United, and what centre-backs would you sign? I've been Statman Dave. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you later.
Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, why not check out some more content on the Statman Dave YouTube channel?